Hello everybody. Being a shrimp breeder and seller who sells lots and lots of shrimp to newer shrimp keepers, many folks are making their very first shrimp purchase ever with me. This for me is the most rewarding part of what I do, and it is growing the shrimp hobby by getting new people involved and into the hobby. I think starting new shrimp keepers down the path of having success in the easiest manner possible is key. If new keepers are having success, I know just how rewarding this hobby is and hope to spread it to all who are interested. People who have success are much more likely to become part of the hobby than those who get shrimp and have them die, obviously. The entire goal of my channel these days is helping people keep and breed cherry shrimp, also known as Neocaridina shrimp, in the easiest, most attainable ways possible. So I like to make shrimp keeping as easy as it can possibly be. Keeping cherry shrimp is super easy, but there are definitely some things you need to do and be aware of before making your first shrimp purchase. The 3 top tips, more like 3 areas of tips, 3 areas you need to know I have for new shrimp keepers, will have to do with the water parameters, having an established planted aquarium, and what are suitable tank mates for shrimp. Most of what I'll be discussing in this video will be for complete newbies, but I've had many questions about water parameters lately and want to touch on that subject and hopefully answer many of the questions I have been getting recently regarding water parameters. So basically I want to cover everything that I have been coming across with my customers who are new shrimp keepers, and I know if I'm getting this many questions just from the people who are buying shrimp from me, there are going to be lots and lots of people out there who have the same questions that I hope to answer in this video. Without a doubt, the most important aspect of keeping shrimp are having the correct water parameters. I like to break down water parameters into 2 different categories when it comes to shrimp keeping, and remember, everything I talk about and that I personally keep will pertain to Neocaridina shrimp. Not all the different kinds of other shrimp. We're talking about cherry shrimp and Neocaridina shrimp. First and most importantly, especially when it comes to Neocaridina and all cherry shrimp, are the parameters that relate to the nitrogen cycle. These parameters are things such as ammonia, nitrites, and nitrates. These are the main things I want to focus on when it comes to neos and new shrimp keepers. The bottom line is, if you have ammonia and nitrates in your shrimp, your shrimp will die. There is simply no other way around it. All shrimps are highly sensitive to ammonia and nitrite poisoning. I don't want to go into too much detail over the nitrogen cycle because that in itself could be a video over an hour long if we dove super deep into it and how to cycle an aquarium. So I'll just cover the very basics of the nitrogen cycle here and how I personally cycle my own new shrimp tanks. When we feed our tanks, the food, whether eaten or uneaten, breaks down into ammonia. Shrimp, fish, and other critters in our tanks all produce ammonia from their waste and just by simply breathing. The critters in our tanks are essentially living in their toilets, so we need to make sure their waste is safely broken down and converted into less harmful substances other than ammonia and nitrites. What we need to break down is this ammonia is known as denitrifying bacteria, or also known in the aquarium hobby as beneficial bacteria. When we hear the term bacteria, most of us automatically think of something bad like an infection or sickness. But the beneficial denitrifying bacteria is not only good, but it is 100% totally essential in all our aquariums, not just shrimp tanks. This bacteria breaks down the ammonia produced in our aquariums into nitrites. The nitrates are still deadly, but there are other beneficial denitrifying bacteria that then turn the nitrates into even less deadly chemical known as nitrates. Most people prefer to keep their nitrates at 40 parts per million or less, and this is done with water changes and live plants. We'll talk more about that later. But the whole point of cycling is getting these beneficial bacteria colonies up to the point and established enough that they can consume all the ammonia and nitrates in real time as they are being produced in your tank, so that they do not build up to levels that are harmful to your shrimp. Many people talk about getting fish tanks going without cycling, and while I certainly do not condone such practices, with super strong hardy fish and light feeding, many of the toughest fish can survive an in-fish tank cycling. But this is not the case with shrimp. Shrimp have to have a tank that is fully cycled. They just cannot handle the ammonia and nitrates like some of the stronger and tougher fish species can. Look at it this way. Your tank will cycle whether you cycle it intentionally or not eventually. Whether you intentionally are cycling it or not, it'll eventually happen. Without a kickstart to your cycle, it can take months for an aquarium to be cycled. These beneficial bacteria we need to cycle our tanks exist everywhere. So as long as our tanks have a source of ammonia, the beneficial bacteria colonies will eventually appear if given enough time. For me, I have found the best way to cycle a brand new shrimp tank without any jump started at all is to put in live plants and a handful of snails with very light daily feedings. Since most snails can handle super high ammonia levels, plants break down the ammonia, and these beneficial bacteria are everywhere and they just show up. You can cycle a tank from scratch this way while also getting your new tank established, but keep in mind I find this method can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. But the good news is, if you already have a healthy established aquarium, then you can cut this time to almost zero and have a 90% cycled aquarium, which is good enough to perhaps even put some test shrimp in with a kickstart from your existing healthy aquarium. And you can do this in a matter of a day. Remember how I said these beneficial bacteria exist everywhere, and with a source of ammonia we can get them to cycle our aquarium in a span of usually 3 to 6 months. But if we already have a cycled healthy aquarium, we can steal some of that tank's bacteria and put it into our new tank. The best way I have found to do that is to wring out an old dirty sponge into our brand new tank, or any kind of filter media. Shake off your dirty filter media, or you can even vacuum some of the muck out of your gravel into your new tank. The bacteria live all over an existing aquarium, but are more concentrated in the filter and substrate. Basically, we want the muck and yuck from our existing aquarium into our new aquarium. Keep in mind, once we do this, the new tank needs an ammonia source, or all these bacteria we just transferred over will starve. So you need to start feeding your tank right away. Even if you just put in a handful of snails, you have to put in some food right away. Or if you don't have any ammonia in there, all that new bacteria you just transferred over will starve to death and die. While doing this will not 100% cycle your aquarium, it will get it to the point of being good enough to add some snails or a couple of temporary fish to get it to the point of being 100% cycled and established. I have found that going this route, I can usually keep a small amount of shrimp with very light feedings, and my new tank will be fully cycled and established in about a month with a kickstart from one of my existing tanks. So now the other type of shrimp tank parameters I want to talk about is your water hardness parameters, or your dissolved solids, the TDS. The other aspect of keeping shrimp and water parameters relates to water hardness and the TDS, or total dissolved solids in your water. I have found this aspect to be far less important when it comes to cherry shrimp, or all neos for that matter. Neos and cherry shrimp, I use that term interchangeably, but it does matter, and I'll quickly explain without going too deep into the subject. I get questions all the time regarding KH, GH, TDS, and pH. And in my time of breeding thousands and thousands of shrimp and selling thousands of shrimp to hundreds of different people, I've discovered that frankly, for 90% of the people, these numbers just do not really matter that much when it comes to healthy, homebred, strong Neocaridina shrimp. What does matter above all else is consistency. I have seen so many people, and I do mean lots and lots of people, get themselves into big trouble by constantly changing their water parameters, always trying to chase that perfect number. When it comes to Neos, they can adapt to a huge range of water parameters and not only survive but thrive. But they just need it to be kept the same. Once they get used to the set of parameters, they need that to be kept the same. I make it a point to talk about this because if you look up shrimp water parameters, you're going to get so many different answers and people telling you numbers have to be this or have to be that, and it is rather confusing. I also find that all these different test kits can be pretty convoluted and have their own learning curve to them. So when it comes to Neos, it just really is not that important. Again, it's got to be healthy Neos. Again, when it comes to Neos, consistency is key and not perfection. My goal is to make shrimp keeping with Neos at least, as simple and approachable as possible, and telling people they need KH, GH, pH, and TDS levels all within certain ranges can be pretty daunting. I raise and breed all my shrimp in my hard tap water that is well outside the recommended parameter ranges. Most of the so-called experts would say my own water is not suitable to keep shrimp in, but as you can see, they do pretty damn good for me. It's how I started and how I continue to do things. My water is what it is. It's always the same. It is what I always use, and I have the same routine I do every single time when I change water. I personally, not anymore, I personally do not even own a KH, GH, or pH test kit. I have some test strips I might pull out to test ammonia nitrites and nitrates every great once in a while for new tanks, and if I suspect a tank might have a problem. But all my other parameters are what they are. My tap water is consistent, my shrimp have adapted to it, and they thrive, even if my parameters are outside of ideal ranges. Again, Neos can adapt to almost anything. What they cannot take is someone always trying to change them, trying to chase perfect numbers. They can adjust to changes once or twice when being moved or bought or sold, but always changing them consistently, always trying to chase those perfect numbers that everyone says you need to have, is far more harmful to your shrimp than just letting them adjust to what you have and keeping it the same. Now, with all that being said, remember, not all tap water is created equal. By that I mean everyone has different tap water. While I have found that people make a huge fuss over Neos and water hardness for no reason, there are people out there with other nasties in their tap water that do not make shrimp life possible. Dissolved heavy metals are big problems for shrimp. These things your GH, KH, and pH test kits will not even pick up anyways. I have sold shrimp to hundreds of different people at this point, and I can say that the vast majority of folks out there have no problems raising Neocaridina shrimp in their tap water, and they can adjust to just about any kind of water hardness as long as it is kept consistent. But there are a small percentage of people who will just not have luck because their tap water has contaminants that are harmful to shrimp. This is why I always suggest to people who are trying shrimp for the very first time and are using tap water to start out slow to make sure their water will indeed support shrimp life. I've also noticed that there are people who have very soft water that can have some problems with Neos in their tap water. The easiest fix for this is to use crushed coral substrate to provide your shrimp the calcium source they need to molt and form their exoskeletons. So what do you need to do if your tap water does not support life? You need to either buy distilled water at the store. No, I said distilled water, not spring water, not drinking water, but distilled. Or get yourself an RODI unit. Distilled water and water that has been through a RODI unit essentially zeroes out all your water. Distilled or RODI water has a pH of 7 and all other parameters are 0. Shrimp, all aquatic life for that matter, and even plants cannot survive with all things at 0. They need minerals They need the minerals for survival. So you take your distilled or RODI water and add shrimp remineralizer. You don't have to test all the different parameters. The easiest way to do this is get yourself a remineralizer for Neos that adds KH and GH. Then add the remineralizer until the TDS is around 200 or so. TDS test pens are cheap and easy to use and read. But if you go this route, you must always use the same methods, the same remineralizer, and get the same readings you have over and over again. Remember, consistency is still king when compared to perfect. It is also important to keep in mind that this is my experience with my shrimp. My shrimp were homebred and healthy when I got them, and have been in my hands for years. They're going to be much more hardy than most of the typical shrimp that you get out there that are imported. So keep in mind that getting the best, most healthy shrimp is just as big of a factor. It's just as big of a factor as any of this that I'm going to talk about in this video. So if you're in the US, check out my website, markshellyaquatics.com, for healthy, homebred shrimp. Or get your shrimp from a hobbyist home breeder whenever you possibly can. Avoid imported shrimp at all costs. The next thing I want to talk about is having an established planted aquarium. When I say a fully established aquarium, what I mean by that is taking a cycled aquarium and taking it to the next step. Being cycled is the bare minimum. If you really want to increase your chances of success, then a fully established planted aquarium is going to take you a long, long ways. By established, I mean this is not a tank that you have recently set up. This is a tank that you know supports life. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, and using an already established tank to seed your new tank will also speed up this process. Here are some of the signs to look for when determining that your tank is not just cycled, but becoming fully established and most favorable to keep shrimp in. Number 1, first sign of a healthy tank that I always look for is, are my plants growing? When plants grow, they're using nutrients up in the water. Most of these nutrients are going to be bad for shrimp, but good for plants. Every time you see a plant make a new leaf, it is converting stuff we don't want into new plant growth. Stuff we don't want for shrimp, we turn that into plant growth, and is becoming one of the best filters you can have. Good healthy Neo shrimp can take a bit more abuse than other shrimp, but the fact remains they are still more sensitive than most fish are that are commonly kept. So if you can get some of those extra nutrients in the water soaked up by plant growth, it is not only going to be supremely better for your shrimp, but it's also going to provide your shrimp cover, extra grazing surfaces for your shrimp, and good healthy plants look good. Nothing looks better than a good healthy planted tank. Number 2 is algae growth. While algae growth is something most people try to avoid, and yes, some types of algae are better or worse than others, but algae growth is not something to be too concerned about, especially when getting a new tank established. All my new tanks go through a couple of different algae phases when they are becoming established. Algae grows because there are extra nutrients in the water, or in excess of certain nutrients when compared to other nutrients. Algae growth in new tanks is perfectly normal and a sign that the tank is balancing itself out. Just like plants, the algae absorb excess nutrients, so while the new tank is getting itself established, it is going to run into nutrient imbalances. This algae growth is not necessarily a bad thing, and in a new tank it is usually better to let the algae do its thing and let things balance themselves out. For me, when I seed a tank from one of my existing tanks, this process usually takes 2 or 3 months. If you're starting completely from scratch, this can take up to several months. Other factors go into algae growth aspect as well. With the biggest being too much light. 3, and the biggest, most important thing to know that your tank is suitable for shrimp, are signs of microfauna life. What I mean by signs of microfauna are the little things that we didn't add, but just kind of seem to magically show up on their own. One of the best indicators I have found is if you see seed shrimp, or technically known as ostracods. These little guys are little tiny white crustaceans, just like shrimp. You can usually see them clustering on algae spots that are growing on the side of your glass. I know if I see these little guys in my tank that my tank is a good, healthy environment that shrimp will thrive in. There are other little critters that pop up like detritus worms, not to be confused with planaria, which are bad. Detritus worms look like little stringy white worms, look like little moving white threads. Basically, if you start seeing little critters appear out of the blue, it is a good sign that your tank is healthy and fit to sustain life. I feel like suitable shrimp tank mates is another topic that is huge for new shrimp keepers. Again, having sold so many shrimp to so many people, I get to hear lots of new shrimp keepers' experiences, and this is something that people definitely need to be aware of. Most people are not breeders and don't have many tanks to keep each critter in like I do as a breeder, and I am well aware of that fact. Many people have their established community tanks and think, I sure would like to try some shrimp. Let's get some and throw them in the tank. Well, here's what you need to know. My most unsatisfied customers are always new first-time shrimp buyers who simply have no idea just how small shrimp are. And keep in mind, it is usually pretty standard practice to send younger shrimp, which means smaller shrimp for most sellers, and for good reason. Younger shrimp can take changes to their water much better than full-grown adults. And smaller shrimp have smaller bioload, which means it's better for them to ship since they're probably going to be spending 3 or 4 days in a little bag with 5 to 10 of their little buddies. For me personally, I send a mix of different sizes of shrimp reflecting the state of the colony that I am selling from. I find that it is best for the buyer as the few adults can provide instant gratification and quicker breeding, and the younger ones will grow up in the new water and adjust. But remember, more times than not, if you have new shrimp, the smaller ones will probably do better, and if you have some shrimp die adjusting to their new tank, it's more than likely going to be the biggest ones that die first. So getting small shrimp is a good thing. So after taking all that about shrimp size and shipping shrimp into account, the whole point is you're going to end up with small shrimp. And most people do not even realize that most full-grown adult shrimp are less than an inch in size. So when it comes to tank mates and shrimp and putting your new shrimp in an already established tank, it is very important to know that fish will eat shrimp. Pretty much all fish will eat baby shrimp to at least some extent. For example, I used to keep endlers with my red shrimp in a 75-gallon tank. Sure, I would have hundreds and hundreds of shrimp living with 100+ endlers, and to most people it would look great and successful, which it certainly was. When I decided I was going to go all in with shrimp, I took out all of the endlers because I watched daily, as it was usually the big pregnant female endlers hunting down and eating shrimp. After taking all the endlers out of my tank, my hundreds of red shrimp turned into thousands in almost no time at all. When you're trying to get a new shrimp colony going, you're going to want all your babies that are born to live, especially at first. So keep in mind that almost any fish will eat a baby shrimp. New shrimp babies are very small, tasty treats, even for small community fish that most people would consider harmless. For me personally, I found bristlenose plecos to be 100% shrimp safe. I've also heard that ottos are shrimp safe, and some of the smallest nano fish like rasboras can be considered shrimp safe. But remember, all common community fish most people keep in their tanks are going to eat shrimp. All live bearers will. I have even had some of my larger, more aggressive guppy lines hunt down, peck full-grown shrimp to death, and then have a feeding frenzy picking apart the full-grown shrimp. And that is with guppies. If you have larger fish such as angels or any of the smaller dwarf cichlids in your tank, that is pretty much guaranteed death for all your shrimp. So remember, baby shrimp are very small. Even juveniles shrimp are bite-sized snacks to most fish. You can keep shrimp with the smallest non-hunter type hunter type of community fish. But you're going to need lots and lots of hiding spots, rocks, and I find moss to be the best place for baby shrimp to hide in. Even in my tanks where there are no predators for the shrimp to worry about at all, I still find the babies congregate in the moss where they feel safe and sheltered. I wanted to make this video to help all the new shrimp keepers out there. My goal of this channel is to grow the hobby of shrimp keeping because it has been more rewarding to me than I ever dreamed of it when I first started. And I feel the best way to grow the hobby is to help new shrimp keepers find success in the easiest, most approachable manner possible. Yes, I realize some of the things I've said in this video are oversimplified, but that is on purpose. I am trying to get the most basic information out there for new people to understand. I feel that with the basic understanding of the bare essentials, most folks can get their shrimp journey started with some kind of success. I know once I found success keeping shrimp, I was totally and completely hooked, and will likely be keeping shrimp for as long as life allows me to. So remember, we need a good cycled established tank, and live plants are a huge help. And that shrimp are little and fish love to eat any shrimp that they can fit in their mouths. Hope I was able to help some people out there with this video, and I was able to cover the most pressing factors that brand new shrimp keepers run into. And remember, where you get your shrimp is just as important as any of these things I've talked about. Getting good, healthy, homebred shrimp is going to increase your chances of success exponentially. If you are in the US, check out my website, markshellyaquatics.com, for all my healthy, homebred shrimp that I have for sale. All the shrimp have been born and raised in my own tanks. And if you're not interested in any of my shrimp, then find a local breeder, someone that you do trust and know, and get shrimp from them. Avoid imported shrimp at all costs. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.